Revenge with Karen. I knew something was off the second the barcode scanner started humming like a goddamn hymnal instead of beeping like it had for 20 years. 4:45 a.m., and even the machines knew something wicked this way shuffled. I was already 2 sips deep into my burnt black coffee. None of that vanilla-scented nonsense. Just the kind that tastes like a lawsuit, and watching the overnight queue from Region 3 stutter like it forgot how Tuesdays work. Warehouse in Omaha was 18 seconds behind spec, and in this business, 18 seconds might as well be a gunshot. By 5 a.m., I was logged into all 3 terminals: left screen for load balancing metrics, center screen for live diagnostics, right screen for security flags. Somewhere in those pixels was my heartbeat. 20 years running a logistics system so complex even the interns called it the Minotaur. I built it, fed it, nursed it through Y2K scares, ransomware wars, and 3 CEOs with a PowerPoint fetish. Then I scanned my eye, like always, like clockwork, not because I wanted to feel important, because it was protocol. My protocol. And here's where I break the fourth wall for a second. If you're listening to this and you're one of the 97% who binge these stories but haven't hit that subscribe button or dropped a like, let me tell you, those 2 things. They're the only things that keep this madness going. No click, no coffee, and trust me, you want me caffeinated. Now, back to my doom-flavored morning. That retina scan, it wasn't for show. It was the ghost key. A failsafe buried so deep in the core architecture, you'd need a PhD in me to even know it existed. Installed after the 2011 breach that nobody wants to talk about because it involved both a Ukrainian hacker and an Amazon Basics vibrator rerouting inventory. Don't ask. I did it alone, quietly. No one else had clearance or the gall. Every day, that scan reauthorized 2,486 logistical subroutines. Every day, scan kept the arteries of America's 9th largest freight operation from clotting like an obese divorcee on a fried butter cleanse. No scan, no movement. Simple as that. No one knew, or rather, they should have. But over time, people forget who bleeds for the system. I wasn't on the Christmas cards. I didn't do softball leagues or lunchroom politics. I was the strange woman in ops with calloused fingers and a death glare that could reset a router. That's how I liked it. Precision without permission. Power without ceremony. But that morning, something felt too smooth. The way Region 2 cold chain updates lagged, then self-corrected before I could even intervene, that meant someone had tried to poke around. The signature was sloppy, like someone using ChatGPT to write Python. Carson. I'd bet my last dime store nail file it was Carson, that nepotism slick chimpanzee with a tie too tight and a brain too loose. I checked my access logs. Still active, still top tier, no flags, which told me one thing: the wolves were planning to move while pretending the shepherd was asleep. Funny thing about wolves, though, they're real brave until one of them steps in a bear trap, so I finished my coffee. Ran the final pre-shift calibration by hand, something none of those spreadsheet-eating mouth breathers even knew existed, and leaned back. They thought I was just a system administrator. They thought wrong. Day still looked like any other. Sun rising like it wasn't about to witness a massacre. My inbox pinged with some generic HR alert titled Upcoming Organizational Realignments. I didn't click it. I didn't need to, because realignment implies you still want the thing you're moving. They didn't want me? Good. Let's see what happens when the woman who is the system walks out without turning off the landmine behind her. The conference room smelled like lemon disinfectant and denial. I knew it wasn't a real meeting the second I walked in and saw water bottles already set out, 3 of them. That's HR code for ambush. 1 bottle says we care. 3 says lawyer-proof. The VP was already seated, eyes glued to a legal pad like it might offer salvation. His tie looked tighter than usual, gilt knot. Carson was parked in the corner, slouched like a kid at a DMV, thumbs flicking through something on his phone, probably browsing motivational CEO quotes or Googling how to spell logistics. I gave him a nod. He gave me a smirk like he'd just won a prize pig at a county fair. And then she spoke. The organizational consultant, real estate teeth, voice like someone narrating a cruise brochure. Lorraine, thank you for coming in so early. Wanted to touch base on some strategic pivots as we align our forward-facing efficiency posture. If that sentence gave you a migraine, imagine hearing it before sunrise without bourbon. She droned on about redundancies, modernization, the future. You'd think I was a fax machine, not a woman who kept this company's arteries from clogging into a $3 stroke. I didn't speak. I didn't blink, just watched as the consultant slid over a branded folder like she was handing me a spa coupon. My name misspelled on the front. That was the cherry. "We'll be parting ways, effective immediately," she said, like she was telling me the lunch special was out of salmon. "Of course, you'll find a generous severance, I bet," I muttered, cracking the folder. Carson finally looked up, not with shame, with triumph. Like this was his coronation. Like gutting me earned him the throne. Mug Bastard adjusted his lapel and said, "No hard feelings, Lorraine. You've built a solid foundation. Now it's time to scale." Oh, scale. Buddy, you couldn't scale a fish, let alone a network. I could feel the heat in my jaw. Years of suppressed migraines and 3 a.m. crisis calls throbbing behind my eyes. But my hands still, ice steady. I said nothing. Just nodded, signed, closed the folder. The VP never looked up once. "We'll collect your badge and company phone." The consultant chirped. "You're welcome to clear your desk today or arrange for retrieval. No escort, no box of cupcakes. Just an email draft waiting to be sent to all staff with my name conveniently removed from the CC list." I stood, Carson already back on his phone, probably updating LinkedIn, excited to lead digital transformation. #new chapter #blessed. And here's the kicker. Nobody deactivated my credentials. They took my badge, activated the door. But the root access, the heartbeat of the entire logistics web, still mine. Every pipeline handshake, every legacy script, every demon cron job still pulsed with Lorraine Devlin's digital fingerprint. You can't delete what you don't even know exists. I walked past security without a word, elevator music playing something perky and cruel. The guy at the front desk gave me a sad nod, like I'd been diagnosed with something terminal. In a way, I had. Out in the parking lot, my car felt colder than usual. I sat there a long time, folder on the passenger seat, one hand on the ignition, the other opening the company VPN one last time on my personal tablet. Still green, still live. I stared at the status bar, everything running like a dream. That's when the rage started to hum. Low, controlled, like a generator warming up. They didn't ask for a handover, didn't even pretend to care how the veins of their empire pulsed. They just assumed it would all keep working, like I was the janitor, like you could fire the heart and expect the body to jog. I went home, poured a drink, logged into my mirror terminal, my private admin console I'd kept untouched since the 2011 breach. Quiet, legal, invisible, the failsafe, still live. The system needed me again tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp, or it would lock down tighter than Fort Knox during a bomb drill. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be there. The ice clinked against the side of my glass like a clock, counting down to something nobody else could hear. I sat in my kitchen, the same one I'd built myself after the divorce, tile by tile, watching the bourbon swirl like storm water. The late afternoon sun leaked through the blinds, casting prison bars across the floor. Appropriate, given the digital cage I was about to slam shut. My tablet buzzed on the counter. One notification, admin heartbeat confirmed system green. The very network I birthed, bottle-fed, and protected like a rabid Rottweiler was still alive and clueless, like a dog wagging its tail at the butcher holding the knife. Part of me, some soft, exhausted shard that hadn't quite fossilized, considered sending a warning. Just a nudge. "Hey, idiots, maybe check your critical dependencies before you hand the nuclear codes to a man-child who thinks redundancy is a personality trait." But then I remembered Carson's face. That smirk like he'd personally upgraded humanity by firing me. The way he said scale like he knew what it meant. No, let them trip. I carried my drink into the den. Sat at the old walnut desk I refinished during the great server meltdown of 2015. Powered on my diagnostics mirror, a private terminal rigged to bypass surface-level logs and give me what I needed, the pulse, the rhythm, the places where the entire $3B empire depended on me. And there it was, blinking. Biometric authorization required next scan, 07-59-59, just like always. Every 24 hours, ever since the 2011 incident when some overeager intern plugged an infected USB into a fulfillment kiosk and almost rerouted 1,000 pallets of medical supplies to a Chuck E. Cheese in Reno. That's when I hard-coded the failsafe. Quiet, elegant, hidden beneath layers of benign syntax and dummy functions. A single retinal scan, mine, was required each day to keep the system's backbone live. If the scan failed to occur, failsafe kicked in. Lockdown initiated. No truck codes authorized. No gate relays responsive. Vendor contracts paused. Forklifts soft-bricked. The entire grid frozen in place like a corpse left out in a blizzard. I'd warned one person back then, the CTO at the time. A man named Greg who wore pleated khakis like they were a birthright and called me kiddo despite being 5 years younger. Retired in 2017 after a mild heart attack and a scandal involving some stock options and an accidental offshore account. Nobody else knew. Certainly not Carson. That boy couldn't find his own earlobe without a GPS ping. I stared at the blinking prompt. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., like always. Except this time, I wasn't part of the system. This time, I was the ghost in the machine. The idea that they'd walk in tomorrow and just expect everything to function, it was insulting. Worse than the severance. Worse than the folder with my name spelled Lorraine. It was the assumption that I'd never mattered in the first place, that I was just there, a background process, a living sticky note someone forgot to replace with an app. I took another sip. If I wanted to, I could still scan. One last time. Keep the beast alive. Carson stumbled through it like a toddler with a flamethrower. But then what? I go quietly. Let them wipe my legacy with one Slack message and a promotional video. Hell no. I reached over, powered down the console, and left the mirror blinking in the dark. They wanted strategic reallocation. Let's see how they like a logistical stroke. No scan tomorrow. No warning. Let them figure it out the hard way. At exactly 8:01 a.m., entire nervous system of a $3 billion empire suffered a silent stroke. No alarms, no explosions, just nothing. In Toledo, the forklift operators at DC-17 turned their keycards, waited, and frowned when their machines sat lifeless like broken amusement park rides. In Phoenix, warehouse gate #3 flashed red as drivers banged their fists against biometric readers that suddenly forgot who they were. Over in Georgia, pallets queued for dispatch began to thaw under the southern sun, while frozen product timers blinked into noncompliance hell. From coast to coast, the arteries of American commerce stiffened and died. Carson, meanwhile, was somewhere in a conference room trying to figure out why the air conditioning worked but their inventory didn't. He'd strutted into the office that morning with a peppermint latte and a plan to synergize data silos. 15 minutes later, he was pacing like a lab rat under strobe lights while 2 junior sysadmins rubbed their temples and muttered about DNS poisoning and firewall misalignments. They restarted the back-end servers. They rebooted internal tools. They unplugged the router like it was a cursed Ouija board. Nothing. The dashboards refused to load. The access logs returned blanks. Every warehouse node displayed a single, elegantly coded status. Authorization key expired. Seek master root clearance. Of course, no one knew what the hell that meant, because I didn't label it with some cheap error code. I wrote it in my own dialect, one only I spoke fluently. Let him Google that. Meanwhile, I sat in my flannel robe, sipping last night's leftover coffee, reheated to the temperature of spite. My diagnostics mirror buzzed like a satisfied rattlesnake. Bound report. Node 06B forklift access failure inbound report. Node 11C gate relay non-responsive inbound report. Vendor queue timeout region 2, they just kept coming. A steady, rhythmic cascade of failure. I hadn't even needed to touch a button. Months ago, I wrote a script, buried, masked, immune to patch scans, that fed anonymized error logs to my private console. Legal? Technically. Wise? Absolutely. It's seen what happened when you let your life's work live behind a company firewall. I wasn't about to let mine get erased by a toddler in cufflinks. I leaned back, smiling in that half-lipped, dry kind of way only revenge can pull out of a tired woman. The vendors were the first to notice. Calls started flooding the corporate switchboard by 8:15 a.m. Not angry at first, just confused. Then impatient. Then ballistic. Contracts had SLA clauses. Some were hourly. Miss a window and you're bleeding penalty payments faster than a hemophiliac in a bar fight. I watched the timeline unfold like a slow-motion car crash. The company's internal Slack was glitching, but I still had visibility into their outbound alerts through one of my legacy syslog pings. They were flailing, trying to piece together something that wasn't broken, but withdrawn. Like trying to wake a coma patient without asking who turned off life support. 9 a.m., someone pinged Carson directly with a message I'll never forget. Who's got Lorraine's last access tokens? Bless their naive little hearts. As if I left anything lying around. My offboarding left no skeleton key, no paper trail. Not even the CTO knew where the failsafe was nested. He'd retired before I finalized the last build. All they had now was a box of blinking lights and a parade of unfulfilled purchase orders. Back in my kitchen, muted the console for a moment and looked outside. Birds at the feeder. Mail truck rolling by. A dog chasing a squirrel with all the hope in the world. And somewhere out there, in glass towers and steel hubs, men in suits were sweating through their undershirts because a woman they underestimated decided to stop playing God on their behalf. The best part? They still hadn't figured out what was broken, because nothing was. It was working exactly as designed, just without me. 10:13 a.m., they officially entered the denial phase of corporate collapse. Carson barged into the war room with a half-eaten protein bar and the breathless confidence of a man who still thought the servers could be rebooted harder. The CTO, Greg's replacement, some ex-Meta alum who wore his hoodie like a personality, had already called an emergency sync. The whiteboard was chaos. Acronyms screamed in dry erase. VPN, LDAP, DDoS. Carson jabbed his finger at the screen showing the cascading failures across the national grid and declared, "This is sabotage. Internal breach. Possibly foreign. Bless his little brain. When in doubt, blame Russia." Meanwhile, the VP, the same one who couldn't look me in the eye 2 days ago, was now suddenly overflowing with concern. He called twice, left a voicemail where he cleared his throat more than he spoke. "Lorraine, hey, just wanted to, check in. You know, we're always friends first. Just wondering if maybe we could circle back and discuss a few things informally. No pressure, give me a ring." He didn't even try to mask the desperation. That voicemail sounded like someone trying to negotiate a hostage release after forgetting the safe word. Then came the flowers. Big tacky bouquet, sunflowers, for God's sake, tied with a bright blue ribbon like I'd just graduated from middle school. Card read, "Let's talk. No hard feelings, Jay. I didn't even bring them inside. I let the wind have them. They wanted no hard feelings, but I'd had to sit through 2 decades of being told my tone was too firm, that I needed to coach upward, that I should smile more in walkthroughs. I kept the entire network alive through power outages, cyber attacks, and a CFO who thought BitLocker was a cryptocurrency, and I was rewarded with pink slips and sunflowers. Nah, don't get Lorraine back with a coupon bouquet. I poured myself a second cup of revenge-roasted coffee and picked up my personal phone. No, not to call them. To call Trish. Trish worked in Federal Logistics Compliance, Department of Transportation. We'd met at a symposium back in 2014 after I gave a quiet talk on database mirroring during disaster scenarios. She was sharp, cynical, drank scotch neat, and had a Rolodex filled with contractors who knew exactly how fragile the shipping infrastructure really was. "Hey Trish," I said, watching the failure reports continue to stream across my diagnostics mirror. "Just wanted to let you know I might be available for some freelance architecture work." A pause, then a low whistle. "They finally did it, huh? Oh yeah, you just consulting now? Thinking about it. You'll be booked out in an hour." I wasn't doing this to be vindictive. Not really. I just stopped feeling the urge to protect people who saw me as an obstacle instead of an anchor. Carson was apparently now trying to restore from archive, but I'd locked clone rights to every core system years ago after catching a junior dev using one of my hot patches in a GitHub repo tagged for learning. Bless his ambition. But no one copied my work again. The backups were clean, but incomplete. Could restore snapshots, but those snapshots didn't breathe without the heartbeat signal. Me. By noon, vendor contracts had tripped to breach thresholds. The SLA penalties would start auto-generating invoices by 3:00 p.m. Legal would have to step in, and legal didn't know code from coleslaw. And me, I sat in total control. Phone lighting up with calls I'd never return, while messages from unfamiliar numbers started creeping in. "Hi, Lorraine. Heard you might be open to new opportunities. We're interested in discussing an advisory position. Name your rate. You're a legend, and we'd love to connect." The tide was turning, not with banners, not with a bang, but with a calm, measured shift. And somewhere inside HQ, Carson was probably yelling at printer. Good. Let him yell. Let him reboot every machine in the building until the lights dimmed. Because until he looked inward or backward, wouldn't realize the truth, I wasn't gone. I was just getting started. By the time the sun started dropping below the strip mall horizon, Carson had gone full goblin mode, holed up in the Glaston Executive Innovation Chamber, hairline sweating through his startup-grade gel, breath shallow from hours of flailing at code he didn't understand. They'd opened the vault, Lorraine's vault. A full internal audit team, 3 senior engineers, 2 compliance analysts, 1 poor intern whose only crime was being good at Python, had been digging through my codebase since lunchtime. By 5:30 p.m., they'd produced 212 pages of technical documentation. Not one of them knew what it meant. Because here's the thing, my code didn't need to hide behind obfuscation or shady backdoors. It was beautifully clean, properly documented, licensed under corporate policy. Every function, every subroutine, annotated like a symphony. No illegal trickery, no black magic, just logic so elegant and modular that unless you'd lived inside the machine, you'd never realize what you were missing. They couldn't find the biometric protocol because it didn't have a neon label that said "Scan here to prevent Armageddon." I wrote it to exist like the human liver, essential, invisible, and tragically underappreciated until it fails. Failsafe was embedded across 19 microservices. The handshake that called it only activated when the heartbeat timed out. No straight line, no big red button, just one digital truth. Every morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I had to look into that cold blue lens. Otherwise, the beast choked. And now it was gasping. Carson, in his infinite ignorance, tried to restore a system snapshot from last quarter, even had it re-enable the old DevOps toolkit and load it onto a secure build server, probably thought he'd MacGyver a reboot before dinner. But when he hit deploy, the server spat back one simple, gleaming denial. Clone rights restricted. Root credentials expired. Authorization token, LDevlin. Of course, I'd killed the clone ladder. 3 years ago, after finding out they were testing my subsystems in an off-site sandbox with none of the encryption protocols enabled. I'd warned them. They ignored it, so I baked a legal security policy into the root permission stack. Fully compliant, fully binding. No one had touched it since, because no one read the policies. They just assumed Lorraine would keep everything humming. Well, hum this, Carson. Somewhere around 6:12 p.m., they tried reaching out to my old contractor, Bernie, the guy who once helped me migrate our authentication middleware to a redundant architecture back in 2018. He'd been retired for 2 years, probably grilling shrimp in Boca Raton. He texted me, they called. I laughed. Hope you're getting paid low. That's when the real shift hit me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter or anxious or plotting revenge over old payroll discrepancies and forgotten birthday emails. I was free. The first time in 2 decades, I felt weightless. Because the beast, the sprawling, pulsating, temperamental monster I'd cradled into being, was no longer mine to tend. And yet, without me, it thrashed like a dying thing. Not because I broke it, because they never learned to feed it without me. And when that realization landed, I smiled. Not the tight-lipped smirk I used in meetings. A real one. Loose, warm, earned. Because I hadn't just built the system. The system? My name was in the compiler notes, tucked in a comment block on line 134 of the original kernel, //auth failsafe LDevlin protocol active. No substitutes. I didn't just write the code. I authored their survival. And now, they were reading my gospel like it was written in tongues. Perfect. The knock came at 7:42 p.m., not a text, not a call, not a desperate email flagged urgent system downtime. A knock. 3 flat raps against the weather-warped wood of my front door. The kind of knock that comes from a man who's rehearsed the motion 10 times before walking up the steps. I didn't rush. I set my tea down, smoothed my sweater, opened the door slow, and there he was. James Tillerson, Executive Vice President of Strategy and Global Infrastructure, or as I called him in my head, the spineless ghost of budget cuts past, standing on my porch like a teenager about to ask a pastor's daughter to prom. His blazer was wrinkled. His eyes were red-rimmed, the face of a man who'd been awake too long in rooms filled with charts he couldn't read. One hand clutched his phone like a flotation device. The other hung by his side like it had given up. He cleared his throat, as if he thought maybe I'd forgotten who he was. "Lorraine," he said. I didn't answer, just looked at him, measured, still. Look, no, this isn't, it's not ideal just showing up. But there's been some complications. Oh, have there? He shifted his weight, tried to smile. Failed, the system's not responding. We can't get vendor chains online, internal authentications are rejecting all attempts. Carson says it's sabotage. I offered, one eyebrow raised, his mouth flinched. He said, "We're not sure." But Lorraine, look, You don't have to come back. I'm not asking that. I just need you just long enough to restore functionality. Reboot the infrastructure. Reset the failsafe if that's what this is. He held his phone up like he might show me something on it, as if the screen could somehow speak my language. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Did Carson, I asked slowly, ever once ask how it worked? Silence. His lips parted, closed. His eyes flicked down, then back to mine, embarrassed. Boy sat in the corner of my meetings and played Sudoku on his phone, I said, voice low, calm, surgical. He called me a legacy asset in a Slack thread he didn't realize I had admin access to. He replaced me without a handover. Not because he had a plan, but because he assumed the system would run itself, like I was just another keyboard. Tillerson looked down at the porch boards. He's overwhelmed. Not my problem, I said. He nodded. Swallowed. Understand? I let that hang there. The air between us thick as boiled tar. And then for a moment I softened. Just enough to let him see I wasn't without mercy, just without tolerance. I'll think about it, I said. His head snapped up. I didn't say yes, I added. I said I'd think about it. And I closed the door, softly. No slamming, no speeches. Just the clean, final sound of a boundary locking into place. Inside, I returned to my chair. Picked up my tea. Watched the diagnostics mirror blink its rhythm. Heartbeat, null. Failsafe, armed, Lorraine Devlin, undecided. But the choice was coming. Soon. By 8:30 the next morning, my inbox looked like a Black Friday checkout line. Only everyone wanted to buy me. Subject lines from logistics firms I hadn't thought about in years. Heard you're open to work. Quiet inquiry from Northwest Freight Solutions, consulting arrangement, name your terms. One of them, rival firm headquartered 2 floors below my old employer's Manhattan office, sent a message so direct it made me laugh into my mug. We'll match whatever they were paying you, and double it if you start today. Cute, but they were missing the point. This wasn't about salary anymore. It was about sovereignty. The night before, after Tillerson's sad doorstep pilgrimage, I'd opened an old file buried on my desktop, a dormant LLC registration dated 2016. Back when I thought, just maybe, I'd get out ahead of the burnout. I'd even picked a name, Firewatch Systems. I liked the poetry. The image of one person keeping vigil while everyone else slept. Never used it, until now. 2 clicks and $49 later, Firewatch Systems was live again. By noon, I had a logo, a landing page, 3 NDAs in review. My phone buzzed nonstop, but not from people pleading anymore. From professionals, respectful, strategic. Some of them had met me at conferences. Some had only heard of me. One recruiter opened with, "We've followed your work since the 2011 breach patch." It was elegant, damn right it was. Meanwhile, across the river, the great machine I'd built was now hemorrhaging. According to someone on the inside, old ops engineer who moonlighted as an anonymous Reddit whistleblower, they'd lost over $12 million in penalties in less than 24 hours. Missed deliveries, breached SLAs, legal scrambling. The finance team attempting to write off act of God clauses like I was some vengeful deity. To be fair, I had created life. Just not the kind you can resuscitate with a defibrillator and good intentions. Carson, bless him, is apparently on leave pending internal review. The poor boy probably thought if he just rebooted the supply chain hard enough, it would forgive him. Word was spreading. Lorraine Devlin wasn't a ghost. She was a phoenix. I didn't rush anything. Took my time. Built my offer sheet carefully. Scoped contracts. Insisted on full architectural autonomy. No more being managed by mediocrities in tailored suits with buzzword allergies. If you wanted me, you got all of me. No filter, no leash. By the end of the day, I'd signed a provisional retainer with one of the oldest rail-linked freight consortiums in the Midwest. Legacy systems, ugly backend, big budget, total freedom. Their CIO's message was brief: your reputation precedes you. We're ready when you are. I read it while watching a sparrow land on the edge of my bird feeder. The world felt slower now. Not because I'd lost my edge, but because I no longer had to fight to prove I had one. My old company, still silent, still bleeding, still pretending the woman who wrote their operating heartbeat could be replaced with a PowerPoint and a pat on the head. Let them flail. I wasn't angry anymore. I was occupied. The chessboard had widened. And this time I wasn't a pawn. 7:59 a.m. The mirror flickered to life, same as always. Blue prompt pulsing like an unblinking eye. Awaiting biometric confirmation. Scan required by 080059. I sat in silence, coffee in hand, fresh ground, French press. mug still warm from my palms. Sunlight split across the edge of my desk like a scalpel. Outside, the street was calm, recycling bins lining the curb, a kid walking a golden retriever with more leash than sense. The scan prompt waited. Patient. Faithful. Trained to believe I'd never leave it hanging. Like an old dog who didn't know it had been abandoned. I didn't move. 0800-01080032080100, still nothing. No scan, no savior. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed once. Then again, a cascade of pings erupting across the screen. I didn't even have to pick it up. The headline lit up on its own, pushed through from every major outlet. Breaking. Major U.S. Logistics firm files for emergency protection after system collapse. Took a long sip. No rush. Let the taste settle. The failsafe had triggered its final cascade overnight. No scan by 8:01 a.m. meant the secondary lockdown procedures activated: network isolation, node quarantines, cloud-based kill switches, locking up regional operations like padlocks on a sinking ship. The kind of digital shutdown that couldn't be reversed without the root iPrint, the one they'd flushed with my severance packet. Emergency protection. Corporate speak for we choked to death on our own arrogance, and now we need a grown-up. They tried everything. Offers, appeals, even threats masked as collaborative solutions. But it wasn't malice that brought them down. It was assumption. Assuming the system was theirs, that I was replaceable, that something built by necessity could be operated without reverence. They learned too late that the system didn't just run because of me, it ran through me. At 0803, new message landed in my personal inbox. High priority. From the competitor I'd spoken to just 2 days before. The one with the ugly backend and the beautiful offer. Subject, agreement enclosed autonomy guaranteed. I opened it. Reviewed the terms, clean, respectful, full creative control. 6-month minimum. No micromanagement. Just results on my terms. I signed it, digitally, quietly, irrevocably. The mirror still blinked behind me. Now useless terminal begging for ghost. I closed the diagnostics panel for the last time. No fanfare, no confetti, just silence. The kind that feels earned. I walked to the window, watched the morning move like nothing had changed. But something had. They'd built an empire on my shoulders, and then tried to cut me loose, forgetting that the heart doesn't beat just because you expect it to. It beats because it's there. And mine was gone. Final line. If you don't know where the heart is, don't try to rip it out. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.